The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, and it changed everything. Ambassador Kate stood in the Great Hall of the United Nations, watching the holographic image of Counselor flicker before the gathered world leaders. The alien was tall and thin, with silver skin and 4 eyes that showed no warmth. Behind him, 11 other figures sat in a semicircle, representing the most powerful species in the known galaxy. "You have 72 hours," said, his voice cold and flat. "Submit to Council governance, surrender all military vessels, and accept protectorate status. This is not a negotiation. This is your only option." The transmission ended. Silence filled the hall. Kate had spent 3 years as Earth's lead diplomat to the Galactic Council. She had smiled at their insults. She had ignored their jokes about humanity being nothing more than clever animals. She had done everything to build peace between Earth and the stars. And now she understood the truth. The Council had never wanted peace. They had been studying humanity, measuring their strength, waiting for the right moment to strike. "What does protectorate status mean?" asked President Maria, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Kate took a deep breath. "It means slavery. They will take our young people to work in their mines and factories. They will strip our planet of resources. They will erase our culture and our history. We will become nothing." The room exploded with voices. Some called for immediate surrender. Others demanded war. Kate watched them argue and felt something cold settle in her chest. This was how civilizations died, not with a bang but with endless debate while the enemy approached. 3,000 miles away, Captain Jack sat in the command center of the carrier Defiance, reading the same message on his screen. He was 42 years old, with gray hair at his temples and scars on his hands from 20 years of military service. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth before humanity reached the stars. He knew what conquest looked like. "Sir," said Lieutenant Commander Amy, his tactical officer, "we're receiving encrypted transmissions from the Council fleet. They're not bothering to hide them." Jack looked at her. Amy was young, barely 30, but she had the sharpest mind he had ever seen. "What are they saying?" Amy's face went pale as she decoded the messages. "They're discussing how to divide Earth's population, which species gets how many humans. They're treating us like cargo." Jack stood up slowly. "Send everything to Admiral Cooper and get me a secure line to Earth." Admiral Ben Cooper was 60 years old and had been preparing for this moment his entire career. When Jack's transmission arrived, he was already in the war room beneath the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by generals and scientists and politicians who were finally ready to listen. "We have something," Ben said, his voice quiet but firm. "Project Blackout. We've been developing it for 15 years, ever since we first detected alien signals. It's an electromagnetic pulse weapon, but not like anything they've seen before. It creates a cascading effect that disables advanced technology for hours." General leaned forward. "Will it work against their ships?" Ben nodded. "Their technology is more advanced, but that's actually their weakness. They rely completely on their computers and AI systems. We built our backup systems to be simple, analog, hardened against exactly this kind of attack. When blackout hits, they go dark. We keep fighting." President listened to the plan. It was desperate. It was dangerous. It might not work, but it was the only chance they had. "Do it," she said. The next 72 hours moved faster than anyone thought possible. Humanity had spent centuries fighting each other over borders and resources and beliefs. Now, faced with extinction, those differences vanished like morning fog. Russia sent its fleet to join America. China shared its technology with Europe. Old enemies stood together and looked up at the stars that had once seemed so beautiful and now held only death. Kate worked without sleep, sending messages to every alien species she had ever contacted. Most ignored her. Some laughed, but a precious few, sent back warnings. The Council had done this before. 40 species had been conquered and enslaved. Their cultures were gone. Their children worked in darkness until they died. Humanity would be next. On the final night, Jack stood on the bridge of the Defiance and looked at his crew. 200 ships against 3,000. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But they would fight anyway because that was what humans did. They fought when the odds were impossible. They stood when they should have fallen. They refused to surrender even when surrender was the only logical choice. "Captain," Amy said softly, "the Council fleet just jumped into the system. 3,200 ships. They're taking position around Mars." Jack watched the tactical display fill with red dots. So many ships, so much power. The Council had conquered dozens of worlds with fleets half this size. They had brought everything because they wanted to make an example of Earth. They wanted the galaxy to see what happened to species that dared to dream of freedom. "Send a message to all ships," Jack said. "Tell them to hold position. Tell them to remember what we're fighting for. Not just our lives, not just our planet. We're fighting for every species the Council has crushed. We're fighting for everyone who will come after us. We're fighting because someone has to stand up and say no." The message went out across the solar system. 200 ships, 50,000 humans, facing an enemy that had never known defeat. Kate watched from Earth as the Council fleet moved into attack formation. She thought about her daughter, just 7 years old, sleeping peacefully in their apartment in New York. She thought about all the children on Earth who did not know that their future was about to be decided by fire and steel. "Humanity of Earth," Counselor's voice echoed across every channel. "Your time has ended. Surrender now or we will take your world by force. You have 1 hour." Jack sat down in his captain's chair and looked at the stars on his. Somewhere out there, his mother was praying for him. His brother was holding his family close. Millions of people were looking up at the sky, hoping for a miracle. "No," Jack said quietly. "We will not surrender, not today, not ever." The hour began to count down, and humanity prepared to fight for its survival. The hour passed in silence. On every ship, in every command center, humans waited and watched the Council fleet move closer. 3,000 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could stop nuclear missiles. By every measure of logic, the war was already over. Fleet Commander Ash stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and felt nothing but contempt. He had conquered 11 worlds in his career. He had crushed rebellions and silenced entire species. These humans were no different from the others. They would fight, they would fail, and they would serve. That was the natural order of the galaxy. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "the human fleet is holding position near their moon. 200 ships. Most of them are small fighters and carriers." Ash laughed, a cold sound that echoed through the bridge. 200 against 3,000. They truly are as stupid as the Council said. "Begin the attack. I want their flagship destroyed in the first wave." The Council fleet surged forward, weapons powering up, shields glowing with deadly energy. They moved in perfect formation, a wall of death that nothing could stop. On the Defiance, Jack watched them come. His hands were steady on the armrests of his chair. Beside him, Amy counted down the distance. 15,000 kilometers, 12,000, 10,000. "Hold," Jack said, "not yet." Behind the moon, hidden from Council sensors, 12 small ships waited. They carried no weapons. They carried no soldiers. They carried only the most important piece of equipment humanity had ever built: Project Blackout. Dr. Frank sat in the lead ship, his finger hovering over the activation switch. He was 63 years old, a physicist who had spent his entire life studying energy and electromagnetic fields. When the government had come to him 15 years ago with a simple question, he had thought they were crazy. Can we build a weapon that disables advanced technology? It was impossible. It went against everything science understood about energy systems. But Frank had done it anyway, because that was what humans did. They solved impossible problems. They found ways when there were no ways. They refused to accept that anything was truly beyond their reach. "Blackout team, stand by." Admiral Cooper's voice came through the radio. "Wait for my signal." The Council fleet opened fire. Bright beams of energy cut through space, striking the first human ships. The destroyer Courage exploded in a ball of flame. The frigate Hope lost its engines and began to drift. Humans were dying, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. "Admiral," Jack said urgently, "we're losing ships. We need Blackout now." "Not yet," Cooper replied. "We need them closer. We need all of them in range." More ships died. The carrier Unity took a direct hit to its reactor and vanished in nuclear fire. 800 lives, gone in an instant. Jack gripped his chair so hard his knuckles turned white. Every death was his responsibility. Every life lost was a weight he would carry forever. 5,000 kilometers, Amy reported, her voice shaking. 4,000, they're almost on top of us. "Now," Admiral Cooper said, "activate Blackout now." Frank pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a wave of invisible energy exploded outward from the 12 hidden ships. It moved at the speed of light, washing over the Council fleet like a silent tsunami, and everywhere it touched, technology died. Lights went dark on Council ships. Engines stopped. Weapons powered down. Shields collapsed. 3,000 warships, the most advanced vessels in the galaxy, became nothing more than floating metal boxes drifting through space. Ash watched in horror as his bridge went black. Emergency lights flickered on, dim and red, showing the faces of his crew frozen in shock. "What happened?" he demanded. "What did they do?" No one answered. No one could answer. Every computer, every sensor, every system on his ship was dead. On the Defiance, Jack smiled for the first time in days. "All ships attack. Target their command vessels first. They cannot fight back. Make every shot count." The human fleet charged forward. Their ships were smaller, their weapons weaker, but they were still moving, still fighting. The Council fleet was helpless. Human fighters swarmed over disabled Council vessels, targeting engines and weapon systems. Boarding parties launched from carriers, attaching to airlocks and cutting their way inside. Lieutenant Commander Amy directed the tactical assault, her voice calm and clear as she coordinated hundreds of simultaneous attacks. Jack led the boarding party himself. He had never asked his soldiers to do anything he would not do. He was first through the airlock of the Eternal Dominion, his rifle raised, his heart pounding in his chest. The Council soldiers inside were stumbling in the darkness, confused and afraid. Their weapons did not work. Their armor did not respond. They were used to fighting enemies who were technologically inferior. They had no idea how to fight in the dark. "Surrender," Jack called out, his voice echoing through the corridors. "Lay down your weapons and you will not be harmed. We are not here to kill. We are here to survive." Some fought. Some ran, but many, shocked by what had happened, simply dropped their weapons and fell to their knees. In less than an hour, Fleet Commander Ash was in chains, his flagship captured by the species he had planned to enslave. Jack found him on the bridge, surrounded by human soldiers. The alien looked at him with hatred in his 4 eyes. "This changes nothing," Ash spat. "You have won a battle, you have not won the war. The Council will send more ships, more soldiers. They will burn your world to ash." Jack crouched down to meet the alien's gaze. "Maybe, but today we beat you. Today we proved that humans are not weak. Today we showed the galaxy that we will never surrender, and that is just the beginning." Across the solar system, the survivors of the Council fleet drifted in darkness, waiting for rescue that might never come. 60% of their ships were disabled. Thousands of soldiers were prisoners. The greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen had been defeated by a species they considered primitive. On Earth, people poured into the streets, cheering and crying and holding each other. They had expected to die. They had expected to lose everything. Instead, they had won. But Kate did not celebrate. She stood in the war room, reading the intelligence reports coming in from captured Council communications. Ash was right. This was only the beginning. The Council would not accept this defeat. They would send everything they had to destroy humanity. "How long?" President asked, standing beside her. Kate did not look away from the screen. 6 weeks, maybe less. They're assembling their primary war fleet. 10,000 ships under Grand Admiral Oss. He's never lost a battle. The president closed her eyes. "Then we have 6 weeks to prepare." Kate nodded. 6 weeks to find allies. 6 weeks to build more ships. 6 weeks to convince the galaxy that humanity is worth fighting for. Outside, the cheering continued. People believed they were safe. They believed the worst was over. They were wrong. The real war was just beginning. 3 weeks after the battle, Kate walked into the interrogation room and sat down across from Counselor. The alien had been captured during the boarding of his diplomatic vessel, which had been hiding behind the main fleet. He looked smaller now, without his robes of office and his floating platform. He looked afraid. "You have questions," said. "I will not answer them." Kate smiled softly. "I don't need you to answer questions. I need you to listen. Your fleet was destroyed. Your commander is in chains. And right now, every species in the galaxy is watching what happened here. They're asking themselves a simple question. If humans can beat the Council, what else is possible?" 4 eyes narrowed. "You think you have won something, you have won nothing. The Council has ruled for 10,000 years. We have crushed rebellions from species far more powerful than yours. Grand Admiral Oss is coming. He will not make the mistakes Ash made." Kate leaned forward. Tell me about the. The alien went still. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, slowly, something changed in his expression. Fear became something else, something like hope. "How do you know those names?" he whispered. Kate pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. It played a recording of a voice, deep and rough, speaking in a language that was not human. "We received this transmission 2 days ago," Kate said. "They want to talk. They say they remember what freedom felt like. They say they've been waiting for someone to stand against the Council. They want to know if humanity is real or just another false hope." Stared at the device like it was a live weapon. They were conquered 800 years ago. They were warriors once. The Council broke them, made them servants. "But they remember," Kate said. "And they're not the only ones. We've received signals from the and 4 other species, all of them asking the same question. Is there really someone willing to fight?" The alien was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, sadder. "I was young when the Council came to my world. We thought we could negotiate. We thought we could find peace. We were wrong. They took everything from us, our ships, our weapons, our children." He looked up at Kate with eyes full of ancient pain. "I joined the Council because I had no choice. Serve them or watch my people die. That is the choice every conquered species faces." Kate nodded slowly. What if there was another choice? In the war room, Jack studied the technical reports that Commander Lisa Park had prepared. Lisa was 40 years old, with sharp eyes and a mind that never stopped working. She had been an intelligence officer for 15 years, and now she was leading the effort to understand Council technology. "The shields are actually simpler than we thought," Lisa explained, pointing at diagrams on the screen. "They use a layered energy field that disperses incoming attacks, but there's a frequency gap, a specific wavelength that passes right through." Jack frowned. "How did we not know this before?" Lisa smiled grimly. "Because no one has ever captured a Council ship intact before. No one has ever had the chance to study their technology, until now." Dr. Frank joined them, looking tired but excited. "We can do more than study it. We can improve it. I've been working with their reactor designs. They're powerful but inefficient. We can build better versions. Smaller, faster, more reliable." Jack looked between them. How long until we can build new ships with this technology? 4 weeks for the first prototypes, Frank said. 8 weeks for full production. We'll need every shipyard on Earth working around the clock. Jack nodded. Then make it happen, we don't have much time. While Earth built its new fleet, Kate traveled across the stars. She went first to a planet of red deserts and endless canyons. They were tall and muscular, with scales like armor and eyes like fire. They had been warriors for 1,000 generations before the Council came. War Chief Era met her at the landing site. She was the leader of the underground, the secret resistance that had survived 8 centuries of oppression. "You are smaller than I expected," Era said, looking down at Kate. Kate smiled. "We get that a lot." They talked for hours. Kate showed her the recordings of the battle, the disabled Council ships, the captured commander. Era watched in silence, her expression unreadable. "Your people are brave," she finally said. "But bravery is not enough. The Council has crushed brave species before. What makes you different?" Kate thought about the question. She thought about all the wars humanity had fought against itself, all the times they had nearly destroyed their own world. She thought about the way they had come together when faced with extinction, putting aside centuries of hatred in a single day. "We don't know how to give up," Kate said. "It's not in our nature. When things get hard, we fight harder. When we fall, we get back up. We've been doing it for thousands of years. It's the only thing we know how to do." Era was silent for a long moment. Then she stood up and extended her hand in the human way of greeting. "Then we'll fight with you," she said. "We have waited 800 years for someone to stand against the Council. We will not wait any longer." The join next. Within 3 weeks, humanity had allies from 5 different species, all of them bringing ships and soldiers and burning hatred for the Council that had enslaved them. Commander Lisa Park uncovered more secrets from captured Council databases, death camps on distant worlds. Entire populations worked to death in mines and factories. Children separated from their families and raised as servants. The Council had built an empire on suffering, and they had hidden the truth from the galaxy for 10,000 years. Kate made sure that truth spread. She broadcast the evidence to every world she could reach. She showed them the faces of the slaves, the bodies in the mass graves, the children who would never know freedom. The galaxy began to wake up. Grand Admiral Os watched these broadcasts from his flagship and felt something he had never felt before. Fear, not of the humans themselves, but of what they represented. Hope was dangerous. Hope could spread like fire. Hope could bring down empires. "Set course for the Nexus system," he ordered his fleet. "We end this now, before it grows beyond our control." 10,000 ships jumped into hyperspace, heading for the gateway to Earth. Jack received the report on a quiet evening. He was standing on the observation deck of his new flagship, the carrier Resolution, looking at the stars. "They're coming," Amy said softly, standing beside him. "Largest fleet in Council history." Jack nodded. "Then we'd better be ready." He turned and walked toward the bridge. Behind him, the stars seemed brighter than before. The universe was watching, and humanity was about to show them what they were made of, 2 months into the war and the galaxy was burning. Fleet Admiral Jack stood on the bridge of the Resolution, watching the tactical display show the movement of Allied forces across dozens of star systems. The rebellion had grown beyond anything anyone expected. 7 species now flew under the banner of the Free Alliance. 15,000 ships, 2 million soldiers. It was still not enough to match the Council's full military power, but it was enough to fight. "Admiral," Commander Lisa Park reported from her station, "our scouts have located the Council shipyard at Prime. Minimal defenses. They've pulled most of their forces back to protect the core worlds." Jack nodded slowly. "They're making mistakes. Os is too focused on the big battle. He's leaving his supply lines exposed." War Chief Era stood beside him, her scaled arms crossed over her chest. Then we hit them where they are weak, destroy their ability to build new ships, force them to fight with what they have." Jack smiled. "My thoughts exactly. Prepare the strike force. We leave in 6 hours." The raid on Prime was fast and brutal. Human ships, flying alongside warships and cruisers, dropped out of hyperspace right on top of the shipyard. The Council defenders were overwhelmed in minutes. Jack watched from the Resolution as Allied forces systematically destroyed every dock, every factory, every warehouse full of weapons and supplies. When it was over, the largest Council shipyard outside the core worlds was nothing but floating debris. It would take them years to rebuild, years they did not have. But Grand Admiral Oss was not a fool. He understood that he was losing the war of resources. He understood that humanity and their allies were growing stronger every day. So he did what the Council had always done when faced with a problem they could not solve with strength. He chose terror. The first attack came on the 300 Council warships appeared without warning and began bombarding civilian population centers. They were not trying to win a military victory. They were trying to send a message. Millions died in the first hour. Cities burned. Families ran through the streets looking for shelter that did not exist. The military fought back desperately, but they were outmatched. By the time Allied reinforcements arrived, half the planet was in flames. Jack received the report on the bridge of the Resolution. He read the casualty numbers. He saw the images of burning cities and dead children, and something cold and hard settled in his heart. "Set course for the system," he ordered. "Maximum speed." "Admiral," Amy said carefully, "if we commit our main fleet there, we leave Earth exposed. Oss could be trying to draw us out." Jack closed his eyes for a moment. She was right. This could be a trap, but there were people dying, innocent people, people who had joined the Alliance because humanity promised to protect them. "We go anyway," he said. "We made a promise. We don't break promises." The Allied fleet arrived at the 3 days later. By then, the Council forces had already withdrawn, leaving behind a world in ruins. Jack stood on the surface of the planet, surrounded by the wreckage of a city that had stood for 10,000 years. Survivors emerged from the rubble. They were burned and broken, covered in dust and blood. They looked at the human soldiers with eyes that held no hope. They had seen too much, lost too much. "Help them," Jack ordered his troops. "Every soldier becomes a rescue worker. Find survivors, treat the wounded, share our food and water. We came here to save lives, not to count bodies." The Council expected the Alliance to respond with revenge. They expected attacks on Council civilian worlds, bombings and massacres to match their own. That was how war worked. That was how it had always worked. But humanity did something different. Ships that carried weapons also carried medical supplies. Soldiers trained for combat set up field hospitals and pulled survivors from collapsed buildings. Engineers who built weapons now built shelters for refugees. The humans and their allies did not fight hate with hate. They fought it with compassion. News of this spread across the galaxy. People on Council worlds watched recordings of human soldiers carrying children to safety. They saw Alliance ships delivering food and medicine instead of bombs. They heard stories of enemies treated with mercy, prisoners given medical care, refugees welcomed instead of turned away. "This is not war," one Council news broadcaster said in confusion. "What are they doing?" Commander Lisa Park knew exactly what they were doing. She was leading a special forces team deep behind enemy lines, heading for a Council death camp on a frozen moon called Seven. Intelligence reports said there were 30,000 prisoners there, slaves from a dozen conquered species, worked until they died and then replaced. "We go in quiet," Lisa told her team. "Our mission is rescue, not destruction. Get the prisoners out. Then we show the galaxy what the Council has been hiding." The raid was surgical. Lisa's team infiltrated the camp, disabled security systems, and opened the gates. 30,000 prisoners, many of them too weak to walk, were carried to waiting transport ships. Council guards who surrendered were treated fairly. Those who fought were neutralized without mercy. Lisa recorded everything. The conditions in the camp, the bodies in the mass graves, the faces of survivors who had given up hope until human soldiers appeared and told them they were free. The recordings were broadcast across every channel in the galaxy. No one could ignore them. No one could pretend they did not know. On the Council Capital World, the elders met in emergency session. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had built their power on fear and lies. Now the lies were exposed and fear was turning to anger. "This rebellion must be crushed," Elder Al declared. "Grand Admiral Os must destroy them completely. Leave no survivors. Make an example that will silence dissent for another 10,000 years." But other voices spoke up. Younger council members, representatives from species that had always supported council rule but now questioned its methods. "The galaxy is watching," one of them said. "If we commit genocide against the Alliance, we prove everything they say about us is true. We become the monsters they claim we are." Elder Al slammed his hand on the table. "We have always been what we needed to be. That is how empires survive." The debate continued, but it did not matter. Grand Admiral Os was already moving. His fleet of 10,000 ships had gathered at the Nexus system, the gateway between Council space and the outer territories. Anyone who wanted to reach the Council had to pass through Nexus. And Os intended to make sure no one ever did. Jack received the intelligence report on a quiet evening. He was sitting in his quarters, looking at pictures of his family back on Earth. His mother, his brother, the nieces and nephews who sent him drawings of spaceships and aliens. "They're at Nexus," Kate said, appearing on his communication screen. "Os has fortified the entire system, minefields, defense platforms, his entire fleet in battle formation. He's daring us to attack." Jack nodded slowly. "Then we attack." "Jack, that's exactly what he wants. He's fought 100 battles. He's never lost. He knows every tactic, every strategy, every trick in the book." Jack smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Then we'll have to write a new book." He stood up and walked to the bridge. War Chief Era was already there, along with commanders from every allied species. They all looked at him, waiting. "The Battle of Nexus will decide everything," Jack said. "If we win, the road to the Council is open. If we lose, the Alliance dies and the galaxy goes back to slavery. There is no middle ground. There is no second chance." He looked at each of them in turn. Humans, species that had been enemies once, now standing together against a common foe. "But I've seen what we can do when we work together. I've seen courage I never thought possible. I've seen compassion in the middle of war. I've seen hope survive when everything said it should die. That's what we're fighting for, not just victory, not just survival. We're fighting for a galaxy where freedom means something, where every species has a voice, where no one has to live in fear." He turned to the tactical display, showing the enemy fleet waiting at Nexus. "Let's go show them what that looks like." The Allied fleet began to move. 15,000 ships, flying toward the greatest battle in galactic history. The Nexus system was a graveyard of stars. A massive gas giant sat at its center, surrounded by 12 moons and an asteroid field that stretched for millions of kilometers. The Nexus gate itself floated above the largest moon, a ring of ancient technology that allowed ships to jump directly to the Council. Whoever controlled the gate controlled access to the heart of the Empire. Grand Admiral Os had placed his fleet in perfect defensive formation around the gate. 10,000 warships, each one positioned to support the others, creating overlapping fields of fire that would destroy anything that came close. Behind them, minefields stretched for thousands of kilometers. Defense platforms with weapons powerful enough to crack planets waited in silence. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, and watched the Allied fleet emerge from hyperspace. 15,000 ships, humans and others, all of them coming to die. They are brave, Oz admitted to himself, foolish but brave. He had studied humanity carefully since the war began. He understood their strengths, their creativity, their refusal to accept defeat, but he also understood their weakness. They cared too much. They protected their allies. They risked everything to save lives. That compassion would be their downfall. All ships, Oz ordered, his voice calm and cold, hold position. Let them come to us. When they enter the kill zone, we destroy them all. On the Resolution, Jack watched the enemy fleet on his tactical display. They were not moving. They were waiting, and that told him everything he needed to know. He wants us to attack head-on, Jack said quietly. He set a trap. The minefields will slow us down, the defense platforms will thin our numbers, and then his fleet will finish us off. So what do? War Chief Era asked. Jack smiled. We give him exactly what he expects. The Allied fleet surged forward, straight toward the enemy lines. Council sensors showed them advancing in a standard attack formation, spreading out to minimize damage from the minefields. It was exactly what Oz predicted, exactly what he prepared for. They're committed, his tactical officer reported. They cannot turn back now. Oz nodded. Wait until they reach the second minefield, then advance, push them back into the mines, crush them between two walls. The minutes passed. The Allied fleet pushed through the first minefield, taking losses but continuing forward. They were halfway to the second minefield when something strange happened. They stopped. Oz frowned. What are they doing? Before anyone could answer, a massive explosion rocked the Eternal Glory. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded in. Sir, we're under attack from behind, his tactical officer shouted. Ships emerging from the asteroid field. They must have been hiding there for days. Jack watched his plan unfold with quiet satisfaction. While the main fleet drew the Council's attention forward, a strike force of 300 ships, led by Lieutenant Commander Amy, had hidden among the asteroids. They had powered down their ships and waited in darkness for days, surviving on minimal life support. Now they were cutting through the Council's rear defenses like a knife through paper. All ships advance, Jack ordered. Push them toward the asteroids. Amy, target the defense platforms, take them down. The Council fleet was caught between two forces. Their perfect defensive formation crumbled as ships tried to turn and face the new threat. Discipline broke down. Captains made decisions based on fear instead of strategy. Oz watched his fleet fall apart and felt something he had never experienced before. He was losing. All ships regroup at the gate, he ordered, his voice betraying the first hint of panic. Form a defensive perimeter. We hold the gate at all costs. But the Allied fleet was faster. War Chief Era led the warships in a devastating charge that split the Council formation in two. Cruisers flanked the enemy, cutting off their retreat. Human carriers launched wave after wave of fighters, overwhelming Council point defenses. And through it all, Jack pushed forward, always forward, never giving the enemy time to recover. On the surface of the largest moon, Commander Lisa Park led a ground assault against the Gate Control Center. Her forces had landed during the chaos of the space battle, fighting their way through Council defenders with grim determination. We need those controls, Lisa shouted to her team. Take them down and we can lock their fleet out. They'll be trapped on this side of the gate. The fighting was brutal. Council soldiers fought with the desperation of people who knew they were losing. But Lisa's team was trained by humans, tempered by months of war, and driven by something the Council would never understand. They believed they were right. When the gate controls fell, Lisa transmitted a simple message to the fleet. Gate secured. The door is open. Jack received the message on the bridge of the Resolution. Around him, the battle was turning. Council ships were surrendering by the dozens, their crews realizing that the war was over. Only Os and his personal fleet of 500 ships continued to fight, surrounding the Eternal Glory in a final desperate defense. "Grand Admiral," Jack transmitted on an open channel, "your fleet is broken. Your gate is captured. There is no reinforcement coming. Surrender now and your crews will be treated fairly. Continue fighting and they will die for nothing." There was a long silence. Then Os appeared on the. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with hatred. "I have served the Council for 300 years, he said. "I have conquered worlds. I have crushed rebellions. I will not surrender to a species that was crawling in mud while my ancestors ruled the stars." He cut the transmission. His remaining ships opened fire. It was over in minutes. The Allied fleet surrounded the last Council defenders and destroyed them with overwhelming firepower. The Eternal Glory took hit after hit, its shields failing, its hull cracking. Jack watched as the flagship broke apart, taking Grand Admiral Os with it. He felt no joy, only relief, and sadness for all the lives that could have been saved if one proud alien had been willing to accept defeat. 3 weeks later, Jack stood on the surface of the Council capital world. The war was over. The Council elders had been arrested by their own servants, people who had spent generations in slavery and finally found the courage to rise up. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years was finished. Ambassador Kate addressed the gathered representatives of 100 species. Some had been free. Some had been slaves. All of them were equal now. "We did not come here to conquer," Kate said, her voice carrying across the great plaza. "We did not come to build a new empire on the ruins of the old. We came because no one should live in fear. No one should be told their life has no value. No one should be forced to surrender their freedom because someone stronger says they must." She paused, looking at the faces around her. Humans, and dozens of other species, all of them watching, waiting, hopping. "Today we build something new. Not an empire ruled by fear, but an alliance built on trust. Every species will have a voice. Every world will govern itself. We will trade. We will share knowledge. We will help each other grow. And if anyone tries to take our freedom again, we will stand together and fight." The crowd erupted in cheers. Kate smiled, tears running down her face. 1 year later, Jack sat on a hillside in Montana, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. He had retired from the military after the war. He was tired. He had seen too much death. He needed peace. His communicator buzzed. He almost ignored it, but then he saw the sender, Amy. "Jack," she said, her face appearing on the small screen, "the first ships of the Galactic Federation are launching from Earth orbit. I thought you'd want to see." He looked up. In the darkening sky, he could see lights moving among the stars. Ships built by humans and aliens together, carrying crews from a dozen species, heading out to explore a galaxy that was finally free. Jack smiled. He thought about everything they had been through, the fear, the battles, the losses, the victories. Humanity had been told they were primitive, weak, worthless. They had been told to surrender, to accept their place as slaves. Instead, they had stood up. They had fought back. They had shown the galaxy what courage really meant. And now the stars belonged to everyone. Jack watched the ships fade into the distance and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope.